Siona God, hello all. Good afternoon, and Wado. Thank you for watching. So this is day 15, 1-5, part A of reading Black Rednecks and White Liberals by Thomas Sowell. And my voice is coming back better, but because I don't feel like I have to force everything, but I still have a low grade fever. So there's that. I'll take the low grade. Come on. My body's doing stuff and I'm still able to do everything I need to do. And my brain is coming back. It's like, oh God, I can't think, I can't talk. No, it wasn't like that. But I was reading stuff and I was like, God dang, it's because my body needed more rest. So I gave it that and I feel like I'm a lot better. Anyway, what has been the record of Germans with regard to other racial or ethnic groups in other countries and in other times? We have already noted the cosmopolitan tone that Germans sought to maintain in the face of group identity extremism among Latvians and Czechs, though in both cases the Germans eventually decided that they had to defend themselves as Germans. In the Western Hemisphere, the first anti-slavery meeting in North America was held by Germans in 1688, and Germans in Brazil were likewise opposed to slavery there. What? A history of the antebellum South referred to a colony of anti-slavery Germans, in quotes, colony of anti-slavery Germans, end quote, who settled in Texas, as well as Germans in Virginia who were, end quotes, antagonistic to slavery, end quote. And Germans in St. Louis who were, end quote, strongly anti-slavery, end quote. When whites in early 19th century North Carolina voted to deny the franchise to free blacks, this disenfranchisement was opposed by voters in almost all of the western counties of the Piedmont region. What? Huh. When the Germans of the Scotch Irish were concentrated, where the German and Scots Irish were concentrated, while Germans were split on many of the complex issues revolving around race and slavery, no prominent German American leader was pro-slavery, and when the Civil War came, the large German population of Missouri was credited with keeping the state in the Union, despite many Confederate sympathizers among other Missourians. As for relations with the indigenous population of the Western Hemisphere, Germans were noted for getting along with the Indians better than other Europeans did, though all had clashes with the indigenous peoples at some point or other. Germans in Paraguay likewise treated the indigenous people in a more conciliatory, conciliatory, C-O-N-C-I-L-I-A-T-O-R-Y manner than other Europeans had. In Australia, Germans established missions to help the Aborigines. As noted in an earlier essay, in the German colonies in East Africa, slave traders were hanged on the spot when they were caught in the act. My dad always said that no matter what the crime is, if you were to take somebody, and this is not funny, but I mean, I'm laughing because he literally always said it. But he's like, oh, I know how to fix crime. And I'm like, what? Like, how, Daddy? And he's like, you just take the person, like, that you know did it. Not like that you framed or whatever it is, right? But like, you know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that they did it. Like, you've seen them. And as soon as you see them, like, right, the people take them out. Well, I don't know if I'm explaining that right. It's not like a citizen arrest or whatever. I'm saying it's like caught on camera, all that kind of stuff. You've got the witnesses, whatever. The popos take them out and then shoot them in the street. Just drop them dead, right? Then you'll stop the raping and the murdering and stuff like that. But I always thought that it would just drive the crime like underground. You know what I mean? Like there would be other clever ways of doing stuff. But anyway, the history of pre-Hitler Germans, whether at home or abroad, can readily stand comparison with that of most Europeans, just as the record of Europeans can stand comparison with that of most other races around the world. That is what makes what happened under Hitler and the Nazis even more chilling. If this could happen with Germans, it could happen with any other people. There were anti-Semites in Germany as in other countries, and their words can now be read as alarming warnings in light of our knowledge of what lay ahead. But there was little at the time to serve as a credible warning of such a monstrous and almost inconceivable event as the Holocaust. Even if we confine the question to those Germans living in Germany during the fatal dozen years of the Nazi regime, The issue is whether the Germans of that era, or even those particular Germans whose votes put Hitler in power, were attracted to him for his racist agenda. In elections held from 1871 through 1928, German political parties explicitly devoted to anti-Jewish principles reached a high of 7% of the vote and a low below 1%. Though these parties included, but were not limited to, the Nazis. A study of anti-Semitism in Germany concluded by, in quotes, by 1914, the anti-Semitic parties were particularly defunct and their press was in ruins, end quote. Hitler's speeches during the election campaigns of 1928, 1930, and 1932 made no specific proposals on what he intended to do about Jews. He apparently did not see German public opinion as ready for any of the actions that he would in fact later take against Jews. When the desperation of Germans in the face of severe economic and social crises, CRISES, created by the worldwide Great Depression of the 1930s, elevated Hitler from a fanatic in the streets to dictatorial ruler. The die was cast fatally. From that point on, and it no longer mattered what most other Germans thought, whether about race or war or anything else. But before then, when voters in Germany had their last free choice, what were Hitler's supporters supporting? What did they know, and when did they know it? And a study that attempted to answer these questions concluded. I'm sitting here thinking about the bread that I put in the oven. I'm like, I cannot see my timer. I don't know how much time I have left. So as soon as that goes off, like, hopefully it won't stop my video. Anyway, moving on. I also got some dough in my hand, so you may see that from time to time. But this is all the time I had to do this. So middle class and other voters did not vote for Hitler because he promised to exterminate European Jewry, Jewry. Neither did they vote for him because he promised to tear up the Constitution, impose a police state, destroy labor unions, eradicate rival political parties, or cripple churches. Even Hitler's Mein Kampf, MEINKAMPF, did not forecast these events. He hit the world's biggest rope-a-dope, I feel. Anyway, during the years leading up to the Second World War, Hitler moved against the Jews in orchestrated stages, allowing him to gauge the extent to which German public opinion supported his actions. A Nazi-sponsored boycott of Jewish stores in 1933 failed so badly that it was called off after four days. Wow. Rather than have it be an ongoing fiasco. Even after 5 years of anti-Jewish propaganda in Germany, when the Nazis in November 1938 unleashed Kristallnacht, Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass, featuring violence against Jews, their homes, and their businesses, the negative reactions of Germans, including some Nazi party members, led Hitler to proceed against the Jews thereafter with as much secrecy as possible. Oh man. Even when Jews were rounded up and sent off to concentration camps, there was nothing at that point to indicate the grisly fate awaiting them, and it was a crime punishable by death to reveal the extermination program. Whoa. Rumors circulated, and some undoubtedly knew more than rumors, but rumors and speculations always abound in wartime. Moreover, even those who were certain of what was happening had no ability to stop it in a totalitarian state, and they and their families could pay with their lives for publicly protesting. Whoa. Even a prominent German Jewish leader like Leo Baeck, B-A-E-C-K, said that he did not know about Auschwitz and the systemic killing of Jews until 1943, even though millions of Jews had already been killed by then. Whoa. Genocide against the Jews was a government program, not the lethal mob violence unleashed against the Jews in earlier pogroms, P-O-G-R-O-M-S, in Eastern Europe, or against the Armenians in Turkey during the First World War, or against the Ibos in Nigeria, IBOS, in the 1960s, or against the Chinese in a number of Southeast Asian countries on a number of occasions over the centuries. Given the fact that Jews had been stripped of legal protections early in the Nazi regime, Any of these things might have been done by the German people. Indeed, Hitler tried to represent Kristallnacht as a spontaneous burst of public outrage, rather than as a staged event that it was. But what the German people did not do in these circumstances may be more revealing about their own attitudes. None of this denies that there were anti-Semitic fanatics in Germany, both in the Nazi Party and among the German public. It simply makes the dimensions and duration of anti-Semitism among Germans at large subject to question. What must also be noted is that Jews were a very small minority in pre-Hitler Germany, never as much as 2% of the population, despite their prominence or even predominance in particular fields such as medicine, journalism, or bacon. I had no idea about that. I didn't know that it was just like a small deal. And also I did not know that they were doing the extermination thing on the DL. Like, anything that we've ever seen, it's literally out, like, nobody's like hush hush about it, right? And they had like, it was like widespread, excuse me, apparently I need some more sleep, widespread throughout, and people were like hiding other people, and like it was just all out in the open. I feel like nobody was, you know what I mean, like, and I'm finding out here that it was all in the hush hush, which is crazy. Okay, I think I might have misspoke and said that, I don't think I said Germans were a small part, but I think I said Jews were a small part. So it says, what must also be noted is that Jews were a very small minority in pre-Hitler Germany, never as much as 2% of the population, despite their prominence or even predominance in particular fields such as medicine, journalism, or bacon. The average German had no compelling reason to be thinking about Jews, one way or another, and indications are that most were apathetic about anti-Semitism, both before and during the Nazi era. Okay, so that makes me wonder, was I correct about what I said earlier? Okay, so I just re-skimmed that, and it literally, I was correct. It said, let me see, led Hitler to proceed against the Jews thereafter with as much secrecy as possible. I don't ever recall that in like anything, including like Schindler's List. I don't remember anything being hush hush other than the people who helped the Jewish people, like, that literally, like, they were all being quiet, clearly, you know? That's just really weird. Huh. Anyway, nevertheless, the egregious behavior of the Nazis toward the Jews prompted some Germans to come to their aid even during wartime, when that meant risking death for themselves and their families. Estimates of the number of Jews hidden in Berlin alone during the Second World War run into the thousands. As for post-Hitler Germany, perhaps the following capsule account from Commentary magazine, published by the American Jewish Committee, is as revealing as any. All told, Germany's voluntary payments for past wrongs amount thus far to more than 55 billion over a period of 6 decades and are unparalleled in history. Wow. These were not like the reparations after the First World War, imposed on Germany by the victorious powers. These were reparations voluntarily paid by a democratically elected German government. This did not, of course, mean that all hostility to Jews had been obliterated in Germany. It does suggest that such hostility was not pervasive, nor necessarily greater than in other European countries. It is hard even to imagine such reparations being paid to persecuted groups by democratically elected governments in places like Rwanda, Uganda, Fiji, or other countries where minorities have been expelled or slaughtered. Summary and implications. The role of the Germans as bearers of more advanced skills to other countries in Europe and the Western Hemisphere has by no means endeared them to all these peoples. Farmers in Honduras complained about having to compete with German farmers there who worked too hard, Latvians and Czechs complained that to become educated, they had to learn the German language. This at a time when there was little serious literature in their own native languages. Oh wow. Russian farmers resented the greater success of German farmers, and the rise of communism with its theories of quote unquote exploitation enabled them to unleash an orgy of violence and destruction on German farm communities. In short, productivity does not imply popularity, whether for Germans or for any other race or class. The history of middleman minorities around the world underscores that point as well. Moreover, it is not usually the masses of the people who must resent the more productive people in their midst. More commonly, it is the intelligentsia, intelligentsia, who may, with sufficiently sustained effort, spread their own resentments to others. When considering the question of the extent to which the Nazi era in Germany reflected the culture of history of Germans as a people, two very different questions must be distinguished from one another. One, the culpability of that generation of Germans who enabled, abetted, or promoted the cause of the Nazis and its catastrophic human consequences. And two, the extent to which the prior cultural, political, or social history of Germans as a people made Hitler and the Nazis inevitable, likely, or an aberration. The first question is harder, but the second question has wider and more enduring implications. The issue is not whether there have been anti-Jewish individuals, institutions, writings, movements, or political parties in Germany. There were, in fact, all of these for centuries before the rise of the Nazis. But the ultimate question is, what was the net effect on the actual behavior of Germans toward Jews, not compared to an ideal, but compared to the behavior of others toward Jews or toward other minority groups around the world? Here, the pre-Hitler behavior of Germans toward Jews compares favorably with that of most other peoples in most other places, not only in behavior toward the Jews, but toward minorities in general. This is no exoneration of anti-Semites, either before or after Hitler. Each generation and each individual bears the heavy burden of guilt for what they did, but not for what others did in other places and other times. Hitler's ascension to power, followed by his coup of converting the constitutional power of a chancellor into the totalitarian dictatorship of a Führer, was of course made possible by the German voters who gave him a plurality in a democratic election in 1933, setting in motion this whole tragic chain of events. Yet the dictatorship, war, and Holocaust that we associate with the Nazi regime in retrospect was not on the ballot or even on the horizon of those who voted for Hitler in 1933. They were seeking a political savior in a chaotic and economically depressed time. The relative political apathy of Germans and their historic law-abiding habits enabled Hitler to seize far more power than he was elected to, with perhaps less resistance than such an action might have provoked in some other societies, and the German military tradition and military prowess made him more dangerous than he might have been